Okay, so I'm going to talk about how to analyse your World of Log reports. First of all, from a raid leader perspective, so getting a general summary of how the raid went and what could have gone wrong. If you load up your guild page on World of Logs, you can see the raids that you did. If you mouse over, bosses that you did not end up killing are shown in red, and bosses that you did kill are shown in green. So if you can't remember what you did on which day, that'll help to remind you. So if I pick a log, okay, we get the home page, which has an awful lot of information on it. Not hugely useful in this form. You notice that you can click on each of the different attempts if you want to have a look at a specific attempt. There's some summary figures down here in terms of damage taken and healing, and then overhealing. Over here we have the DPS, and some numbers here which was hit the most and which spells did the most, but all lumped into one. It's not hugely useful. One thing that you might be interested in on the front page is this box down here, which shows dispels and interrupts, but you should note that it only shows successful interrupts. So if you have more than one person trying to interrupt, only the first person will show up. So we can use the Analyze tool. We can look at damage done. There's probably no point looking at the trash as well, so we can select a specific boss fight either by clicking on one of the attempts here, or if I just click this, it'll show me all of the attempts for that boss. So here we have an overall DPS chart, damage done. If I change that to by target, I can see who hit what, and if I want to have a look into that a little bit further and check that people are really hitting what they're supposed to, I can select a player, and I can see specifically what that player attacked the most and check that they are attacking the right thing. I can also have a look by spell. At the moment I am still looking for a specific player. I can see what they cast the most, but there are more detailed charts if you want to look at specific players, so we'll come back to that when I talk about assessing the logs from an individual point of view. We have a look at damage taken. By target is the most interesting. We can see who took the most damage, and hopefully that's a tank. And we just want to check that there aren't any DPS taking way more damage than any of the other DPS, because then they are probably standing in something they shouldn't be. It's also interesting to have a look at this by spell, because we can see which abilities were causing the raid the most damage, and check for specific abilities like Pillar of Flame, where ideally wouldn't be causing anyone any damage. And if you mouse over it, you can see the top people who took damage from that, as well as having a look at the overall data here. We can of course have a healing chart as well as a DPS chart. Shows you what your healers are doing, and you can also have a look at if your DPS are doing anything to heal themselves as well. If you're interested, you can also see which are the most used spells for your healers. You can mouse over the spell, see which healer is the one using it, and then you might want to go and have a more detailed look at that player. You can also use the compare fights. Again, you can select which bosses you're actually interested in and the attempts that you want to compare. So if we compare our first attempt with our last attempt, that's really not going to give us much useful information. Damage done isn't the most useful stat to look at anyway. Damage taken might provide us with something a bit more interesting. And here you can see that the difference between one of our early attempts and our successful attempt was that there was quite a lot less damage taken in our successful attempt, the blue one, than in our early attempts. Healing done might be interesting to look at, particularly if it suddenly drops off. That might be a point where your healers are running out of mana. You can also go into a little bit more detail for each of the damage done, damage taken, healing done and healing taken. These graphs will show you quite a lot of information, and it really depends on the fight as to what is going to be useful information to look at. You can add your characters to the chart so you can see we're looking at damage taken. At the moment we're looking at all of the fights, so these troughs here are in the middle when we were running in. If we want to, we can look at one specific fight, which will be more useful, and you can add lines to it showing you when people died, creatures, so in this case these would be the parasites, and in fact if you mouse over you can see who did what. So this one shows when rebirth went in, this one, if you get the mouse over right, shows you when someone died and who died, and you can see who's taking damage when, and if there is someone who's taking damage at a time when no one else is, then that might be something to look for and to investigate further. We have a look at healing done. Still looking at one fight here, so we might be wondering why all of the healing done suddenly dropped there. Were the healers running out of mana, or was there just not much to be healed? So the final aspect that is worth looking at is survivability, which shows you how long a player was alive for in a particular fight, which can give you an idea, again, of who is standing in stuff they shouldn't be, taking damage from sources they shouldn't be, although of course if they die it might not necessarily have been their fault. So again, this is just to be used as a pointer rather than a way to point the finger of blame. And that's about as far as you can go in terms of getting an overall feel for the raid. After that, you're going to want to pick up on whatever you noticed went wrong and then start to investigate specific players a bit more.